looks like we got most of our guests trickling in here, which is nice. Maybe we'll start here at 6:35. Looks like we're just missing Chris. He is presenting last though, so that's in our favor. Appreciate everyone's patience. All right, let's jump into it, team. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Ruby Hill Neighbors meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 17th, 2022, and it is 6:35 p.m. My name is Graydon. I'm the Ruby Hill Neighbors president. I've been in the job. This is my first year, but I've been a resident since 2016. I'm joined by most of our leadership team. Tiffany wasn't able to make it this evening. She's our communications director. I believe Brandy will be trickling in here probably mid-meeting. Jackie, last meeting we had the leadership team introduce themselves, so I don't need to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jackie Geiselman. I am a past president for Ruby Hill Neighbors. I have lived in the neighborhood since 2015 and been a part of this crew for going on 5 years now. Pretty awesome opportunity, awesome group of people, awesome neighborhood, and it's always great to get these updates and information. So appreciate everyone joining us live and appreciate everyone who's joining us after the fact as well.
Thanks, Jackie. It looks like we got Ken on the call as well. Ken, how you doing, sir?
Great. Yeah. How you doing?
Doing good. Want to give a little intro to the people?
Sorry. Yeah. So I'm half the treasurer team. Megan's out of town at a conference, so I'll be here kind of representing the other half of that team.
Sweet. Thank you, sir. All righty, our agenda this evening will begin with updates from District 4 Police Station, from the District 4 Police Station, and then the Council District 7. Then we'll transition to our first guest, Julian Wolf with Denver Animal Protection. He will be discussing all things animals in Ruby Hill and Denver as a whole. And then lastly, we have Chris Vogelsang returning with OV Consulting to give us updates on the Bikeway Corridor project that run along LaPan and Jason. So without further ado, Mr. Anderson, I will hand it off to you, sir.
Thanks, Graydon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Officer Anderson. I'm one of your two District 4 Community Relations officers. We did have 4 at one time, and now we're down to 2. Jeremy Chavez normally does these meetings, but he's teaching a class tonight, so I'm filling in. I'm going to start with the stats for your neighborhood as it pertains from January, as a comparison from January through March of 2021 and January through March of 2022. The next set of stats aren't in quite yet, so we only go up to March at this point. And then after that, if anybody has any other questions I can try to answer, feel free to ask. Okay, so January to March 21, burglaries, 16 reported. In 2021 and this year there were 16 reported, which is a 0% increase and 0% decrease. So that's good and bad, I suppose. Criminal mischief, damaged property. Last year 23 reported, this year 23 reported. That's a 0% increase, decrease as well. Larcenies, last year 29, this year 15. That's down 48.3%. We like to see that. Theft from motor vehicle, last year 24, this year 24. 0% increase or decrease. Motor vehicle theft, 43 reported last year and 29 reported this year with a 32% decrease. So these stats coming into 22 are actually pretty good. You know, the ones that are even, that's at least it's on an increase, and normally across the city we've been seeing increase in stats such as these. So that's good for your neighborhood. But the theft of motor vehicle going down is huge because that's been a big problem for the last couple of years. And to see any kind of decrease is really good news. Does anybody have any questions about those stats or anything else?
I just had a general question. You know, Rooster Magazine, like a popular magazine here in the Denver metro area, they said supposedly like 100 carjackings a day in the Denver metro area. Does that sound correct, or did I read that right?
Well, I can't confirm or deny that stat because I don't know what the stat is, but I can tell you that seems really high. I get citywide activity reports, as they're called, and it reports like the biggest activities across the city for any given day. And I don't see that many carjackings. There are carjackings, don't get me wrong, but I'd say that seems excessive. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your meeting. And if you guys ever have any questions you want to get with us offline, it's Jason Anderson or Jeremy Chavez. We're there at District 4, and you can feel free to email or call us anytime. All right. Thanks.
Officer Anderson, before you sign off, do you mind throwing the phone number in the chat or contact information just so we have that to disperse as needed for people who might have follow-up information or questions or concerns?
Sure. So my email is jason.anderson with an O-N at denvergov, one word, .org. And Jeremy's is Jerami, spelled kind of different, .Chavez at denvergov.org.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. You guys have a good night.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All righty, then we'll transition to Iris. Iris, how's it going? With a update from Council District 7.
Hi, just a quick update on Denver Days. I got the date for July 30th through August 6th. And that's all for me. I'm gonna leave my email address for everyone.
Perfect. Thanks, Iris. So Denver Days was July 30th through August 6th is the official week that Denver will be promoting Denver Days. Oh. Iris, I think you're on mute, just in case you were chatting. Sorry.
Oh, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm done on my end.
No, I was just clarifying. It was July 30th through August 6th. Is that the dates you said?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Iris, this is Graydon. Is there like I guess, when is the permitting process open for that? Or is it already open? Is there a permitting process? Appreciate it.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again?
I was just curious when the permitting process opened for that, if there is one.
That I am not sure. I'll come back with more information with that.
Appreciate it. All right, any questions for District 7? Possibly in the chat there. All right, just put your email in the chat. Okay, wonderful. Let's move on to our first guest, Mr. Julian Wolf. Are you there, Julian?
I am.
Hey, how's it going, sir?
It's going well.
Wonderful. Well, the platform is yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I try and make my rounds every year. I try and hit as many RNOs as I can. I see some familiar faces here. Jackie, I think I've seen you for a few years running now. And Graydon, I don't know if our paths have crossed, but thank you so much for making the space for me, and I appreciate all y'all. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things for the coming summer. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the programming we have specific to this neighborhood. And then I also want to just like kind of open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions about what we got cooking, and please feel free to send me all the dogs pooping on my lawn and my neighbor's dog won't shut up question. I got all of it. I got it. I can help. My name is Julian Wolf. I am the community engagement manager for Denver Animal Protection. I handle a lot of general engagement like this, where I try and make it around to the city, but I also oversee a navigator program. Think of them as case coordinators or social workers for people that own pets. And we'll talk a little bit about that program because it's specific to this zip code and really this neighborhood. But I also live in Ruby Hill, so it's kind of a win-win for me anytime I get to pop by and hear some of these updates. Couple of quick reminders. We have the summer coming up. Please be very mindful of leaving your dog in a hot car. We want to be careful, especially as the temperatures rise. You need to make sure that you are not leaving dogs in a hot car. If you do see a dog in a hot car, please feel free to call dispatch. 911 does dispatch us. You can also just call 311 and we'll come and handle it. There is some ability for people in an emergency to break a window, but you need to be really careful. And I would highly recommend, unless it is a dire emergency. If there is a dog up in the top of the car, up in the window, barking at you, that dog is likely not in an emergency because heat rises. Dogs, if they're in a heat, emergency, they're lethargic. They're down at the bottom of the car, usually unresponsive. But if you see a dog up barking at the window, it's probably not in distress beyond just being an active dog. But at the same time, we also want to be cognizant. So go into the nearest local business, or you can call and report it to 311, or like I said, 911 does dispatch us if you're worried about that dog in the hot car. The other thing is don't let your dogs drink standing water, especially when it's warm out. It is really dangerous. Cyanobacteria or the blue algae, it is a toxin. It's not a poison. There's no antidote for the toxin. So it's really, really important. Don't let your animals drink standing water. Also, if you take your dogs for any walks around like Sloan's Lake, any of these other places, there's usually signage posted, but at the same time, never take it for granted. Bring water, bring a little collapsible bowl, or whatever you got, but don't let your dogs drink, especially out of like shallow standing water in any of these lakes. We have one, I always forget the name of the park. It's Huron, or can't remember. It's right up the road from us. Don't let your dogs drink standing water. Now, a couple of policy changes. So we're about a year and a half into pit bulls having a legal avenue of ownership in the city and county of Denver, which is amazing. If you have a pit bull, please, it does everybody good right now to get your dog an evaluation and get that dog permitted. The more we can show that there are good doggos that are pitties in this city, the more likely at the end of the sort of 3-year trial run, we'll be allowed to continue to own pit bulls legally in Denver. Now, this doesn't just mean that, oh, well, the problem is solved. No, pit bulls they're a dog that it takes a good owner, just like any dog, just like a German Shepherd. Please don't take it for granted, and we definitely don't. But if for any reason you have a pit bull, you get it permitted, you go through the process. If there are no issues with that dog over 3 years, at the end of that 3-year period, you no longer have to get a permit. It just reverts to a standard license, and we don't have to worry about anything. But right now, just so everybody knows, there hasn't been an upswing in pit bull attacks, in children killed by pit bulls, or all the other things that people were worried about happening when people had a legal route to owning a pit bull in the city and county of Denver. But what we do see is just in general, more dogs spending more time at the shelter. So there is a great place to get a new friend. If you've got one dog, it means you need two dogs. If you got two dogs, it means you need three, but you can't have more than three because now we're starting to mess with city ordinances. But I'm telling you, 3 is the lucky number. If you don't have 3 dogs, you need 3 dogs. And I got a shelter just 5 minutes away here where you can adopt a pet. That also goes for kittens. That goes for turtles. That goes for rabbits, hamsters, mice. You name it. We usually have it. If you're bored and you have kids and you want something to do, bring them to the shelter for on the weekend. It's fun to walk around. It's a really awesome building. It belongs to you. You guys are our bosses. We're your municipal animal shelter. We're a division of the Department of Public Health and the Environment. We're basically your local public health department adopting out animals. And yes, once a used dog salesman, always a used dog salesman. That's sort of my jam. But ultimately, so we, get your dogs licensed, especially if you got pitties, take them in, get an eval. It's walk-ins every day between 1 and 3 p.m. If they're not considered a pit bull, then you get paperwork saying, hey, this is a Denver lab, and you don't have to worry about it. Or if it's evaluated as a pit bull, you can get a breed permit, and then you are a shining example of good dog ownership, and you're doing your part in allowing us all to continue to own these wonderful dogs. Now, I want to transition to some resources and some services that we offer to this neighborhood. So every weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., first come, first serve, low-cost vaccines, $15 a pop. You can get your vaccines. You can get a license package and 2 vaccines, I think, for $30-something. It's first come, first serve, but it's always happening. There are some times when it's canceled, so always check our website. It's www.denveranimalshelter.org. But you can get low-cost vaccines for a fraction of the price that you would pay at a private veterinarian. Now, also in this neighborhood, we did, 5 years, it's been 5 years running now. We have a community engagement navigator program, and that is, we have now 3 case coordinators. We have one for this area, so 80219, one for the Montbello area, 80239, and one that helps us with select populations, older adults, people with disabilities, and people experiencing homelessness. All you got to do is either belong to one of those populations or live in one of those zip codes, and you get free collars, you get free leashes. If your dog has a medical issue, we will cover the medical cost. If you need a spay-neuter surgery, right now we do have some openings for free spay-neuter surgery. That includes free vaccines, free microchipping, the works. We're really, really excited to offer it to this neighborhood. And if you have friends or families or neighbors, have them contact Denver Animal Shelter. You can call 311 to get our information, or you can also get my information directly from Graydon, and I'm happy to hook you up. It's equity at work. We're very much identified certain areas and pockets of this city that needs access to services, and our job is to do whatever we can for the residents. So we're really excited to have that. Now, I oftentimes will have an officer with me. Nobody was able to attend with me today because we have basically 14 officers to cover the entirety of CCD. So if you're talking to your council person, please mark it that, hey, Denver Animal Protection needs more bodies, because we do. We really haven't increased our total employee size, and every year there's tens of thousands of people that move to Denver. And, on average, I believe the American Veterinary Association, about 0.4% of all, so about 40% of all homes have dogs. So if we've had 200,000, 100,000, that's a lot. It's like 4,000 extra dogs every year. So, that's a lot for us to not actually grow ourselves. So again, we're on the stump right now, trying to get that monies. City council's always has been an incredible asset, and are incredible with us, but feel free to nudge them if you want. All right. So that being said, I usually have an officer with me, but I don't today. So I will do my best to answer any questions that people might have, specifically about issues in the neighborhood with animals. We realize that there are tons of animals that are off leash. If you don't call and report it, we don't know about it. we oftentimes only have 14 officers out there, and that's not 14 officers all at once. That's 14 officers over a shift 7 days a week. So there's usually only, you know, four, even at the highest point, you know, 4 or 5 officers on at one time. So we'll do our best. It may be a bit of a lag time before we can get to you, but we will do our best to get to you. And yeah, so does anybody have any questions specifically about, you know, their neighbors' dogs, their own dogs, or enforcement related issues?
I have 2 questions
Please.
that are completely unrelated.
Love it.
I know that one of our last in-person meetings just so happened to be a pretty bad skunk year. And I know that that was something of concern. Luckily, knock on wood, we haven't had a ton of sightings or smellings that I am aware of. But in the case that there is a wildlife situation or circumstance, do you have information regarding what's best practice, how to get in touch with the right people for that? And then I'll let you answer that and I'll follow up with my next question.
Perfect. No, thank you for that. So what we see is, okay, so rabies is a zoonotic illness. And what that means is something that people can get. Oftentimes it's fatal if you're not vaccinated for it, which is why we ask that you go to vaccine clinics and get your animals vaccinated. The reason that you have to purchase a license is because it's directly tied to rabies vaccine. So we know who has vaccinations, who's in compliance. Because if you see a drunk skunk, you need to call us. All right. Now, usually you see it in 5 to 6 year cycles. Rabies is not something that kind of is usually an omnipresent sort of thing, if that's even the right term. But since we live on west of 25, we saw tons and tons of rabies positive wildlife. All right. Now, these are animals, oftentimes skunks, that are interacting with your dogs when you let them out to go to the bathroom. They may be indoor dogs for the most part, but it's really important to get your animals vaccinated, especially for rabies. Also, distemper parvo. I mean, there's 2 primary vaccines for dogs. So it's rabies and distemper parvo, or DHPP, and there's other illnesses that are also, but distemper is something that we see a lot in raccoons. We saw a lot of rabies in skunks. And now it's several years ago because with COVID, it's a time warp. But ultimately, again, if you see a skunk turn in circles or acting aggressively out in the middle of the day, in the middle of the road, that's when you call us. Like I said, if you see a drunk skunk, call us. We may, you know, we'll likely come out and assess the situation, but yeah, it's something that we take very seriously, and why it's really important that everybody gets their dogs and their cats rabies vaccinations, because you don't want them getting into a scuffle with the skunk, getting positive for rabies, and then they bite you. So yeah, it's thank you for that question. It's not something we haven't been seeing high incidence, but probably in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll probably see that cycle come back again.
And when you say call us, you just mean 311 or directly try and call animal control?
Yes, 311, or we are dispatched through 911. Highly recommend 311. We want to try and keep those 911 lines clear, but if you feel it's crossing into a like a life or death situation, please call 911.
Perfect. And then my other unrelated question, kind of follow-up question, maybe a little bit of request from support from your office as well, is in regards to, like you said, these last 2 years of time warp COVID years. One of the benefits and a good thing that came out of it is there are a lot more people who are partaking on our paths. The Sanderson Gulch Trail is awesome. A lot more people are walking their dogs along the trail. And personally, being one of those people, I have noticed quite a bit of increase in waste of people not necessarily picking up after their dogs. And I understand that's just kind of a reality of it. But one of the reasons that I can foresee this being a problem is along that entire Gulch Trail, we only have 2 trash cans. And so in the case of an animal with waste, there really isn't anywhere to put it. Mm-hmm. Do you have any recommendations on helping us get additional trash cans or support in that way, or any recommendations for neighbors who aren't necessarily pulling their weight or picking up their dog poop?
Yes, pulling their poop.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of things. So we unfortunately we're not the ones setting up trash cans or dog poops dispensers. That's usually Parks and Rec or the appropriate entity that is in charge of that. And I know Sanderson Gulch is going through some renovations. I'm not sure exactly who that is. I don't think it's Parks and Rec. Is it?
I
Do we
think it's
know?
in partnership with the city. It is not only Parks and Rec, but it was some of the money that was allocated with the music festival from 3 years ago that is allowing for that to happen. That is part of the concern. Is there some cool things happening there? I would hate to ruin it with dog poop. So
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I mean, I would highly recommend reaching out to your city council office, because they likely can at least connect you in that concern, because that's unfortunately not something that we can handle. We're enforcement, so people, and what I can say is if you know who is doing it, take a photo, take a video of it, because we will need proof. And if you know where they live, that helps. Now, we also understand that there are people that want to remain anonymous through that process. The unfortunate reality is there's not a lot of ways to do that if we want to get to an enforcement level, right? So one of the things that I always tell people, and this, also MJ or Jamodi. Yes, same with raccoons. If you see a drunk raccoon in the middle of the day, it could be distemper, it could be rabies. Sorry. But ultimately, yeah, that the reality of, sorry, I saw that question and I answered it. What was it? What was my track of thought?
just helping to
Yes, dog
maintain
poop.
and keep
Yes.
those paths clean. And there is a question from Facebook too, which I'll follow up with when.
Perfect. Yeah. So talk to your neighbors. I can't tell you how many times something could be avoided. Now, I totally understand that people want to remain anonymous, and maybe there are real cases where maybe you're scared, or scared of your neighbor. But so many times they will appreciate you reaching out and letting them know like what times a day that they are, oh, I didn't even know my dog barked, I'm at work. We really want to foster, communication between people, because how this all works is basically you file a complaint. You can only stay anonymous for so long. You'll need to log when people are when dogs are barking, or if you're seeing poop on the ground, you're going to have to take photos of it. And eventually, how we resolve it is we get you into a room with a facilitator and we force you to have a conversation. So it's going to be, sometimes you can cut all of that out by starting with the conversation and trying to connect with them. It doesn't always work, in which case it really helps us when you say, I've already spoken to them and it didn't go well. Because we may just say right there, like, would you mind first speaking to them and then coming back to us, and then we'll have you fill out the forms. So again, I get why people want to remain anonymous, but this is also about building community and participating in our community. And when there's issues that you see, it's really important that you have that conversation, because at the end of the enforcement, though there could be fines and citations, we're going to force you all to talk.
That's completely fair and good information, just especially with new neighbors in the area and maybe not aware of what the process looks like. We did have a question from Facebook, which I am interested to hear your insight on this too, but just how we can be good stewards for wildlife, not just the drunk skunks and the scary raccoons during the day, but we also have reports of some beavers that have been spotted living in the Sanderson Gulch Trail. And knowing that it is a popular location to walk our pups, is there recommendations on how we can be good stewards to the wildlife that exist in our neighborhood?
Yes, actually, wow, it's been like 4 or 5 years, but I know that Jolin, Councilman Clark, has dealt with this before. His office is a great office to reach out to, because it's a little tricky with beavers, right? Because ultimately, like with raccoons and skunks and that sort of stuff, I mean, honestly, we're in their habitat, right? We live in their habitat. This is where they are naturally. Now, have they proliferated because the old lady down the street thinks she's feeding feral cats and really she's just feeding all of the raccoons in the neighborhood? Yes, that's a thing. So, we always ask that everybody keep your trash cans closed, that sort of thing. Now, beavers, there are some there's some home rule stuff with Denver, but also the state of California, and nuisance species that can cause damage, including like squirrels and that sort of thing, to property. Now, I remember when the beavers were chopping down there were some trees in Sanderson Gulch that they got a few years ago. And I believe that they are relocated. But again, I would really recommend wildlife isn't in our purview. But I know Councilman Clark has dealt with this in the past, and he likely can connect you to some resources or wildlife agencies that would relocate those animals, because I believe they fit into one of those categories of nuisance wildlife, just because they cause damage by building a dam, and then you got flood damage and that sort of stuff. So I'm sorry that it's not a perfect answer because it's been a few years. But I believe, so that is Fish and Game and wildlife, experts. Our expertise is in triaging injured wildlife and companion animals. So if there's an injured wildlife, yes, we do respond to those calls, but then we contact the appropriate agency to rehome them because we have no facility at our shelter to handle wildlife. Now that donkey that got away from the birthday party running down South Federal, oh yeah, we'll take care of that guy. But yeah, I hope that was a non-answer that was passable.
I have no follow-up questions, so that seems to be sufficient. I appreciate that insight.
Cool. Well, that's all I got for y'all. Support your local animal shelters. It's right down the road. If you're bored, come swing by, say hi. Check out some doggos, some cats. It's kitten season. Come and get them kitties. If you've been waiting for kittens, now is the time. They're crawling all over the place and they're adorable as heck. So thank you all for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Julian. That was amazing. Appreciate you bringing the energy.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys for holding these meetings. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Always. Have a good one.
Yeah.
All right. That was great. Beavers and donkeys. Let's transition. Looks like we got Chris on the call. Chris, how's it going, sir?
Hey, Graydon. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Welcome back. We're excited to see where this saga has gone with the bikeway corridors there.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if I'll be as exciting as Julian. He's pretty fired up. He likes his job. I do too. Hey, so I'm on my screen. I'd love to share from Vogelsang Computer. Can someone enable?
We'll get you added. Just a moment.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Jackie.
I just gave you host privilege, so you'll have to give it back if anyone else needs to share, but you should be all set.
So I'll ask you, Jackie, I'm on twice. So you made Chris Vogelsang the host. That's my phone that I'm like using as my TV camera.
I gotcha.
And my Vogelsang computer is the one that has my presentation.
Okay, so you actually have permission now to make yourself a host.
Oh, I can.
Because of what I just did.
I'll see
I got a little ahead of myself. I apologize.
No sweat. There we go. I'll make me a co-host.
There you go.
Good, I'm in charge. Awesome. That doesn't happen often. I have 4 kids. So I'm not always okay. Great. So I've got what I'd love to do. So I thanks for having me back again. And I know everybody's busy and we don't go over time. So I'm gonna try to be kind of brief, but I want to hit some key points and then I can answer questions. But really what I'm hoping to do is I want to share where we are. So great, just like you said, like what's happened since the last time we spoke a month ago. Just see if you have any questions and tell you what's happening next, okay? And I've kind of organized the presentation. We heard input from you folks, from Athmar Park, from our stakeholder working group through this schedule here, right? So we've had a couple of stakeholder working group meetings, we've had a couple round of RNO meetings, and we've heard good input. And I've kind of structured this to respond to that and kind of answer the questions that were asked. So just a quick overview. As a reminder, so what we're talking about is Jason LePan, Louisiana. So originally in Denver Moves, South LePan Street, sort of between Alameda and Ruby Hill Park, was identified as a corridor. We found through our initial work that was pretty hard to implement at this time, so we were looking for alternatives. What we settled on to move forward with was South Jason Street between Virginia Avenue down here to Louisiana. And this is this part between Exposition and Louisiana and over to Huron is the current detour right on the South Platte River Trail. So if you ever ride the trail, you're forced to do that now. We want to extend it to the north 3 blocks. And then we want to connect over on Louisiana and La Pan to Ruby Hill Park more directly, rather than through the side. So that's kind of the overview. It includes improved crossings at La Pan in Florida. So that's right at that Ruby Hill Park kind of north entrance, the east north entrance, right? That goes to the pavilion. And then the Huron Street crossing where the trail detour crosses now. So just a summary of what we heard from folks, including you all. Why are we doing this? Why isn't the Platte River Trail good enough, right? That's one thing. Is Jason Street safe? Is the exposition adjacent intersection safe? And now that people are using that more, there's been some concerns about our people knowing what they're doing there. Railroad track crossing across Louisiana, just east of La Pan. So if you're on La Pan and you kind of go east, it goes downhill across those tracks towards the river. That's pretty rough. Let's improve these crossings. Let's get a better connection to the new bridge that's built across the river. And what happens to parking? Okay, so I'm going to go through those each kind of quickly, and I can circle back through as we go. So a lot of words on this, but this is about what does Jason do for us that the Platte River Trail doesn't do. And we talked to folks through input. We looked and analyzed. Basically, is quite a few things we think are good. More direct access to businesses along Jason Street. I know the business owners told us, their customers aren't generally biking there, but the employee base is kind of a different population sometimes. And some of those folks bike. So we want to make sure you can get to where you work safely. We want to connect to the Sanderson Gulch Park and Trail that we were just speaking about, where the beavers live, I guess. And, make sure that connection happens. There's been investments there. We want to get right to Ruby Hill Park, right? Instead of coming off the trail up to Florida, across and all that. We think Ruby Hill, the Ruby Hill neighborhood is, connects to more directly. Athmore Park's a little removed. It's a block removed. So we talked to them about that. We wouldn't have to cross South Drive to access Ruby Hill Park, an alternate route at night. We actually heard from quite a few folks that they didn't feel as comfortable on the trail at night, and they'd feel more comfortable in an on-street kind of situation, and just another option. So those are the reasons why we think this is something we want to pursue. The next thing was, is it safe? It's an industrial street. These bike lanes got put in I think it was November of 2020. Is it worse? Are we having more accidents? So we looked at crash data for 5 years, and we looked before the bike lanes were installed and after. And we actually found that the crash rate per month has decreased pretty significantly since the bike lanes were installed. We also excluded, one of the comments we got from our stakeholder working group was, well, yeah, that was COVID, and so nobody was driving here, right? So we took out March 2020 to April 21. So we took out kind of that year's worth of data where peak COVID was. And we still found that there was a pretty marked increase in safety, decrease in accidents. So not 100% clear what the causal relationship there is, but what we know for sure is it didn't get worse. And we think there are some safety benefits, actually. It might be slowing traffic, slowing turning movements, more activity, those things. The other thing about safety, when we looked at it, was that almost half of the crashes happened at one place. So Jason in Mississippi. So in this figure, north is to the right, kind of as you're looking, I have it turned so we could see more of it. So this is where, half of the crashes in the whole corridor have happened. It makes sense, right? It's busy, there's a traffic signal there. And so we're actually proposing some changes to this intersection, both through striping and vertical elements. If you can see these little black dots, those are those flex posts, right? That go up so they don't damage cars, but they discourage cars and trucks from crossing over that space. So we're trying to slow the turns, right, off of Jason onto Mississippi and vice versa. We're trying to create much more defined space in the intersection and make the crossing safer. So we think this will have a positive impact on safety at that intersection, which is one of our key spots. Jason and exposition. So just to mess you up, now Jason Street runs north-south in this figure. So this is kind of the north end of that trail detour that's in place today. So you come off the trail, come on to exposition, right? And then make your way back down to the south end to the Huron connection. We did look at putting an always stop in here. It's quite a long stretch without any interruption. There's no traffic signals, no stop signs. There's some criteria we use to look at that called warrant analysis. It's a traffic engineering term. And we didn't find that it met the standard, met the criteria for doing always stop. But we did find when we did a crossing analysis that it met the criteria for doing some enhancements here. So you can kind of see lanes in both directions. We're doing these what's called curb extensions. So we're trying to narrow the roadway crossing distance up with these vertical elements and striping. And then put a marked crosswalk across here to really identify that that's the place. So if you're going southbound on the trail, you would come cross over here, right? And then go south. And northbound, you'd go and just go straight in. So this is, we think this will have an improvement to that. I can't see the chat, but did I see a question in the chat, Jackie?
It
Just a
wasn't a
comment?
question necessarily. It was just a champion for
Okay.
the safer crossing at Jason and Mississippi. As someone who is frequently crossing that intersection, I'll second what Brandy said there as well. So
Awesome.
yes, just an applaud for that recommendation.
Super. Yeah, thanks, Brandy and Jackie. Okay, so that's here. Another thing we heard. So this is looking east on Louisiana, just east of La Panne. And so you can see that railroad track crossing is pretty deteriorated, right? We talked about that last time, I think, with Gabby, and let us know that, inside that kind of envelope, there's not a lot Dottie can do because that's the railroad's property. But we have alerted them and asked them to come and repair this. In the meantime, I went and rode through here. Last Friday, I visited some of the businesses, chatted with folks about some of their issues, and then rode around, checked it all out again. And noticed this issue, and really the downhill side, so heading eastbound, isn't quite as bad as the uphill side. We're going a little slower going uphill. I think we had a person at this meeting last time that said they actually crashed going over this within the last month. So this is an area we're looking at to see if we can maybe align the bike lanes to a smoother part, or maybe we do some other treatment where people have more choice, right? They don't have to stay in the bike lane. They can go over the smoothest part. But this is a tough one, and there's not a lot we'll be able to do in here exactly, but at the approaches, we'll do what we can. Not a great answer, but that's kind of where that sits. This is, so these are improved crossings. I've got two figures. I'll actually start on the right. So La Panne Street in Florida, La Panne running north-south here, Ruby Hill Park to the south, Florida running east-west. I know there's a new one of these at Navajo, I believe, that I saw when I was out there. That's pretty cool. That whole corridor, it looks like it's a safety corridor, and they have try to do various treatments along Florida to improve safety. That was the idea anyway. But this is what we're proposing so that we can get across Florida safely and connect into Ruby Hill Park. We're proposing these rectangular rapid flashing beacons. The bike lane, so southbound bike lane would come along here, and there'd actually be this little thing as a push button that's separate from the sign, so you can reach it without having to get off your bike, right, and walk over. You should be able to reach it right from the bike to activate it and then cross. And we've working with Denver Park and Rec. We did a field visit with them. They are going to partner with us and build a sidewalk connection. This is just an approximation. If you're out there, it goes uphill as it heads west, right? And so we have to meet accessible grade, for wheelchair accessibility and things. But this will connect to the Sanderson Gulch Trail as quickly as possible while meeting grade. So we knew this was possible. It probably can go a little steeper. So that'll be great so that you can get from La Panne to the Sanderson Gulch Trail to Ruby Hill Park across this much more safely. The other one that I'm actually pretty excited about, well, I'm excited about all of them, but this one's really exciting because it's pretty innovative. So on the west side, this is Huron Street running north-south, Platte River Trail at the bottom running kind of southwest-northeast. And this is where the detour is now. And if you've ever been out there, this is just a wide intersection. There's a lot of asphalt out there. And it's not really clear where you're supposed to go and how the bikes work. The bikes today, they come south, they bring them to the middle and then try to cross directly right. But there isn't any help for that. Key elements that we're talking about here, and I just got confirmation today that Denver Traffic Operations is on board with this, giving this a try. So we're going to create a median island in the middle here, right? So imagine it won't be made of concrete like curb and gutter, because that's not what our program has. But we're going to have one of two things. We'll either have asphalt curbing, or curb stops. So like if you went into the Ruby Hill Park, actually did some of this recently where they're trying to keep people from driving into the park in the grass. And you see those like curb stop things, the concrete things. So we'll either make it with that. You can see there's some long lines here, and then there's flex posts in between. So we'll create this space, and we'll create accessible pedestrian crossings with tactile, we call them tactile warning strips, these yellow things, the thing that you can feel with your, I forget what they call it, but if you're blind and you're trying to make your way through, right? So this will all be raised on the edges and protected. So either that or it'll be some concrete barrier. And I think we're still kind of working out the details with the speeds, but that gives us the opportunity to put these flashing beacons at the edge of road, right? And at the crossing, instead of like up here where the crossing isn't. So we think we can narrow this up, make it much narrower, sign it, mark it, get an active control device, and create a safe space here. So I'm pretty happy about that. When the detour went in, this got looked at about how to do this. We've got new materials and new guidance since then, and we think this is doable. So that's pretty cool. That'll move through final design, and we'll give it a shot. Another thing we heard, there's this new bridge around the Kentucky alignment over the Platte River. How do we get there? How do we do it? So one thing we're definitely going to do, enhance wayfinding signage as part of our Jason Street corridor plan, try to get people, connected over here. Also, this is the desired connection point around Tennessee. That's dependent on some development plans, but we're kind of keeping that on the front of the radar for everyone to make sure we're hoping that developer makes this and the city's well aware. So we've talked about it a bunch, trying to make that happen. And then parking. So in general, we don't have very many new parking impacts compared to the existing detour. And that's a little bit of a caveat I'll talk about in a second. So we have a couple of spots where we're going to lose a few spaces. So over here on the left side is La Panne, Louisiana. There are about 7 spaces here just north of the welding and fabricating shop that will need to be no parking to make everything fit. And we think there's 2 or 3 spaces. I've outlined it as 3 just to be conservative on Louisiana, just east of the railroad tracks. That'll have to be signed no parking. We've been talking with the business owners about this and making sure they're aware. The caveat is when the detour went in between, so let me, sorry, I'll make you sick for a second. I'll come back. So the detour, when it went in between Mississippi and Louisiana, like this section here, that 2 blocks, that's a little narrower than the rest of Jason Street. Jason Street north of Mississippi is about 48 feet wide. And that's enough room to do parking on both sides and bike lanes and travel lanes, make everything fit. South of Mississippi, it's only 40 feet wide. And so that's not enough room to have everything, right? So I'm going to go back here. So what they did when they did the detour is they removed the parking on the east side of Jason Street, right? And they kept it on the west. What this figure shows, this is Jason Street running north is to your right. Mississippi's at the very right edge. And this is Arizona on the left here. This is all one business here. They're one ownership. There's one business here that's like a 4x4 shop. I talked with these folks and the folks down at a auto body repair shop in detail a couple weeks ago. And we talked about how their operations work, how their loading works, where their trucks go, how they stick out, visibility issues they're having with the current detour, just different things they're experiencing and how some of their concerns about safety and sort of their ideas for, how to address that. A couple of their ideas were to move it to a different street, like say Inca or something. We've looked at those and they don't really work because we can't get across Mississippi. right? There's no signal, so it's difficult. So what I did do though, is I looked really closely at that 2-block section, at driveway locations, at how off-street parking is working, at how the loading docks are configured and where they are. And what I'm proposing, you know, in this concept, and we're looking for comment, is to swap it. So what this shows is we'd have no parking on the west side and parking on the east side. A couple of reasons for that is that there are a few more driveway locations on the west side. There's more small pieces of like groups of parking, onesie, twosie spots. And when you come out of the driveway, so I'll show you like, show you the next slide. So this is 1 block south. So this owner was really concerned. This is an auto body and hair repair shop. And there's parking, you know, right up to the driveway, and it kind of just keeps going, right? And when they pull out, they can't see bikes coming, let alone they can't see cars really, or bikes. It's pretty hard. And so you know, we were like looking at ideas. And so if I remove parking on this side and add it to the east side, then you don't have those visibility issues anymore here. It creates a few issues here on the east side, but these driveways are lower volume and they're a little less busy. And we're proposing to remove like 1 parking space south of each driveway to make that visibility better. So anyway, long story short, we think swapping it will make us for a safer environment, and it'll help the business operations too. I know what they'd really like is for us to remove the bike lanes and put all the parking back, which I totally get, right, where they're coming from. But where we are is we have an existing facility that's going to be in place at least for a while. We've talked about, you know, we need to make it safer. And then as always, Dottie will evaluate, right, as we go forward. How much use are we getting? What's the safety like? Is this something that's working? So we'll just kind of keep an eye on it. But for now, that's where those solutions are heading. And that's really, those are the things we heard, and then sort of how we're addressing them. I'll take questions, discussion, but I'm going to just leave this one up while we talk. So one of the important thing is those little screen captures I showed you, those are online now and available for detailed comment. And so if you go to bit.ly/WDSS comment, that'll take you to Dottie's webpage. You can click on Jason Street. You can see all the details, and you can leave comments on specific locations. Like if there were, I know we had some folks that had really specific things, like there's a driveway that's really dangerous or a sidewalk that's a curb ramp that doesn't work. Like you can click on that and leave a comment right there, and then we'll get it. We'll be open through June 6th, so about 3 weeks. They went up yesterday, and I am just about, tomorrow I'm going to send out the blast email to everybody, making sure they're aware. And if we get a lot of comment, I'll leave it open a little longer. That's fine. But 2-3 weeks is usually the story. So that's it. It's 7:26. I took a lot of time, but I really was excited to share. I think it's pretty exciting for the neighborhood. So go ahead,
That is
Jackie.
awesome. I do have a quick just follow-up comment / question / suggestion, and I will for sure put this on the survey as well, so you have it documented. But I know in one of the instances where you were speaking about losing some parking spaces was along Lipan near the Ruby Hill side of things,
Yeah.
which I understand is businesses, and I understand that you have done, yep, exactly, have done a lot of insight, but more so from a partnership opportunity. One of the times that I know that that space is really utilized pretty heavily is during Levitt shows, which I know that they are already a proponent for bike traffic. They would prefer people use rideshare and use biking to get to their shows anyways, as well as the fact that Ruby Hill is a bike park. It has one of the best bike parks in the state, if not the nation. So as this project is developed and promoted and completed, I can see that Levitt would be an awesome partner. I am on a community advisory board. I am no way, shape, or form speaking for them, but I think that would be an awesome opportunity to reach out to them to help promote that, to I guess take the edge off of losing some of those parking spaces. Gotcha. And promoting it more so as a bike-friendly opportunity.
Yeah, Jack, that's great. So by coincidence, about 5 years ago, I did do a Ruby Hill Park like transportation plan, looking at Levitt's demand and everything. And we did identify one of the, I did want to say that, this idea here at La Pan in Florida, this tied in exactly with one of those plans priorities, because we know we have a lot of people going across here. So we are trying to partner with DPR, and I'll talk with Adam Lind. He's our parks rep about, Levitt and like what kind of cross promotion we could do, but that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll put this back up. And I know it's late, everybody's probably tired of this, but you do have an opportunity, like you can go and comment. You can also email us. We change it to, as we move forward in the project, bikes@denvergov.org is like the best way. And then that gets forwarded. It won't get lost in someone's email, but that's how the best way to sort of keep things going. And I don't think I'm planning on coming back anytime soon, unless you had some more questions or wanted me a little later, but we'll just stay in touch, Graydon and Jackie. And if anything comes up, just feel free to reach out and ask, and we're happy to come back anytime.
Yeah, Chris, I did have a couple
Yeah.
questions before you get out.
Sure.
So the inspiration for all this being on Jason, did I hear you say it's getting across Mississippi going north-south, like right compared to like a street like Huron there, where
Yeah.
at Mississippi it's just stop signs?
So yeah, so Jason, right, Jason has the signal. I should have pulled up a map, but I'll just use this. Has the signal at Mississippi, right? La Pan also does, but La Pan really isn't feasible this time. We can't implement the type of facility we need to, right? Then as you go east, there's not really any way across that is protected. Like Huron isn't, Inca isn't, right? Where there's no traffic light or anything. So that's kind of how we ended up where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
we also
it-
looked, I should have said too, Graydon, we did look west over here too. So we
Mm.
actually, we did a whole, like, I don't know, we looked at 10 different corridors early. And the west side was trucky because it was real, the grid gets discontinuous, the wayfinding was hard. And then we get down to Florida and it's tough to get across still. And then we weren't tying to Ruby Hill Park, which was kind of one of our main things. I actually looked at that Sanderson Gulch Trail. I hadn't ridden that before. That culvert is crazy.
Yeah.
Like the space culvert, where you're like, zoom. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really surprised.
Uh-huh.
No, that's interesting. And I guess I asked because, I used to work down on South Jason, and oh my goodness, I've never seen so many semis
Yeah.
backing out, taking the street, street people park, a bunch of contractors, bunch of busy folks. But yeah, because, again, I'm not an engineer, but just looking at it, the Huron, and now I understand the battle with Mississippi there. And then, you're probably not the guy to ask, but for the enforcement, when this does happen, right, for people who are parking in the bike lane, and I guess I use the example right now, if you're familiar with the street going north-south between Evans and Jewel on Zuni here, they recently, implemented this. It's great. I do the scooter and I bike, but oh my goodness, it's like constantly people are parked in the bike lane. And again, I'm sure you're not the guy to ask. But
No.
like what is that chain of communication look like when this does get implemented? Is it DPR? Is it Appreciate
So
it.
it's usually the way that works is I think it's kind of that same 311, right? Is like the best start. But what happens is it becomes a right-of-way enforcement thing, right? And so if you're seeing people parked in the bike lane, if you let folks know this is a constant occurrence, right? Maybe there's a certain block. I think that Zuni, I've ridden that a few times. I think there's a few blocks where like it's pretty regular, right? It's kind of the same cars. They'll come down and either educate, probably, I don't know what their process, they probably write tickets right away, but educate and enforce and get that behavior changed, right? Same thing up north. North Zuni got implemented too, and there's a few spots where that happens as the neighborhood gets used to the differences and the changes, right? And what they need to do now. I did want to say, so this block, this is Jason Street at South of Mississippi. So I was out there and I watched, and yeah, there's a lot of truck traffic that like waits. So like this business here has one loading dock and that's usually full. And the trucks pull off of Mississippi and then they're sitting here waiting in the bike lane, right? For their position. So what we tried to do is set this up so that they wouldn't be parking in the bike lane and that their maneuver could work. And then their nose, the way it's set up now, the truck nose sticks out across the bike lane when they're at the dock, right? And as we switch that parking to the other side, we'll get less instances of conflicts and of like blockage of that lane with loading. So we're trying to figure that out. But where were you? I was just curious, Graydon, where were you at? Jason, like where?
I was more north there. I forget that park, that they, with the jungle gym and all things of that
Yeah,
nature.
yeah.
But,
Yeah, right here.
commuting to
Right here.
work every day, I've never seen so much activity on one street, and I can only imagine being a biker trying to go down that street. I'll write some comment because, again, now that I got better insight, because I mean, for the folks going east-west on Mississippi or speeding, man, if we were able to put like a blinking crossing sign at Huron, and then that runs right along the park there where the connection is going to be. Again, I'm not an engineer, but
Mhm.
that's where I would see. That would be
Gotcha.
my insight.
Okay. Yeah, take it. Yeah, give us that input. We're looking for that feedback.
Wonderful.
We did. Yeah. So yeah, give us that in that Mississippi piece. That's that's one of the cruxes, right? Getting across that is want to make sure that's safe.
Yeah, don't want to be like Frogger, right?
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
wonderful. Well, we
Chris?
appreciate your time this evening. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
One quick, there is a couple people who just joined on Facebook, and there was a suggestion. I will also say to these folks, in case they didn't hear it beforehand, is that there is the survey that will be presented now to offer this recommendation as well. But we have an awesome group who is actually doing a mural on the Sanderson Gulch Trail, just to the north side of the Space Culvert, as you described
Yeah.
it.
Right.
And so, and they were saying that an awesome thing would be to have a stop sign somewhere between Tejon and Lipan on Louisiana, as far as the safety recommendation. And let's see here, I'm currently starting the mural on Sanderson Gulch Trail at Arkansas Avenue in South Pecos, made possible through PS You Are Here. So that's the organization shout out, the stop sign. It would be greatly appreciated. And one other comment came in about, why do the bike lanes continue to use commercial industrial areas for bike lanes? Are the bike lanes protected or painted on by the street? And so this was, again, someone who just joined. And Anita, to answer your question, it's a little bit of both based on the recommendations. There are some safety measures that would be physical in the intersections, but just if you wanted to reference the commercial versus residential statement.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a fair question. So the way things kind of get laid out when Denver get built, right, is the industrial streets tend to be wider, right, because they're trying to handle the truck traffic. So they get set up and where they can handle like the 48 feet of width we talked about, right? So that's enough room to do parking, bike lanes, travel. But yeah, that was part of like the Denver bike plan in 2010, looking at those industrial cross sections, seeing the space that's available, looking at the truck movement. So it's really important, I think, just saying industrial streets are good or bad for bikes. We kind of got to look at how it's laid out, right? And I do think, to be fair, I think the piece of Jason between Louisiana and Mississippi is challenging. Right. So there's a lot of smaller businesses, a lot of driveways, which is why we're trying to pay special attention there. But yeah, I think that's kind of one of the main reasons they tend to be streets that go through to places. They have protection, they have signals at major crossings. And so we're really working through how to make those work for this new use. But yeah, totally get it. I'm hearing the same thing, maybe with a different tone. From the business owners, right? Is this the right place for this? And so, yeah, we're looking for community input. I know we got some input last meeting that, folks use this corridor to ride to and from places they need to go, and they're excited about having some improvements. And I've also heard from folks saying, we think it's maybe going to be a safety issue, and that's why we kind of looked at that safety data to make sure we weren't, really missing something from the get-go.
Awesome. And again, I just want to reiterate, especially Raphael, your question on Facebook, make sure on the survey, from what I understand, it's interactive and you're able to identify some safety zones or considerations. So with the stop sign recommendation, that they are able to point that out and request or suggest a stop sign or some sort of safety measure on that stretch, because it is a bit of a throughway that people do tend to go pretty quick. So I can understand that request.
Yeah, totally. I know you guys, I'm just going to show you real fast. So this is the bit.ly/WDSS comment, takes you here. And if you scroll down, you'll see concept design South Jason Street. If you click the red button and scroll down a little, so you'll see there's a view report, and my computer's a little slow, but that basically that roll plot, the design will show up here, right? So you kind of see how that, I know it's small on your screens, and then you have a little plus, you can zoom in a little bit, you can add a comment, right? You can click the plus where you want, you put your name, your email, add a comment. Email is optional, right? And then there's some parts, sorry, there's also a mobile friendly. I know a lot of people get on their phone. So if you click the view mobile friendly, it'll be a little bigger and easier to deal with on your phone. So we'd love it. Just go there, tell us what you know. We want to know what you know. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate your time, and we'll definitely get those slides shared. Appreciate it.
Yep. And I'll send, I'll send to you, Graydon, PDF of this presentation. You can feel free to
Wonderful.
share with your community. Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
for-
Yeah, really appreciate your time this evening. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks to everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.